Don't touch my left side. The wounded man said it so quietly that Nurse Evelyn Cross almost missed it. 3 seconds later, he drove a trauma resident into the wall hard enough to crack the plastic chart holder behind him. Room 12 erupted. A stainless steel tray hit the floor. Instruments scattered across the tile. Someone shouted for security while the cardiac monitor screamed above them. But the man in the bed did not look confused. He looked hunted. Chief Daniel Mercer had arrived at Portsmouth Naval Medical Center 11 minutes earlier with 2 fractured ribs, a deep laceration beneath his shoulder, and enough blood soaked through the side of his tactical shirt to turn the fabric nearly black. The ambulance report identified him as active duty Navy. The second call identified him as SEAL. The third came from somewhere high enough in the chain of command that Dr. Adrian Vale personally appeared in the trauma bay. None of that mattered to Daniel. Get away from me. His voice was rough now. 2 nurses had already tried. One had been cursed out. The other had nearly lost in 4 line when Daniel ripped his arm free. Dr. Vale stepped forward, silver hair immaculate despite the chaos. Chief Mercer, you are bleeding internally. If you continue resisting treatment, you may die. Daniel's eyes moved toward him with terrifying clarity. Then let me. Silence followed. Evelyn stood near the medication cart in navy scrubs, unnoticed as usual. At 34, she had learned that invisibility could be useful. Dr. Vale certainly found it easy. He had passed her twice without acknowledging her, despite the fact that she had been the first nurse to notice Daniel's blood pressure falling. Sedate him, Vale ordered. 5 milligrams midazolam. Evelyn looked at the monitor, then at Daniel, then at his hands. No, Vale turned slowly. Excuse me. Every face in the room shifted toward her. Evelyn kept her voice level. His pressure is 86/52. Sedating him before we understand the bleed could make things worse. Vale stared at her badge as though reminding himself who she was. Nurse Cross, I did not ask for commentary. No, doctor. She stepped back. Daniel watched her. Not her face. Her feet. Then the door. Then Vale's hands. Evelyn recognized the sequence. She had seen men do it in rooms without fluorescent lights, in places where doors were measured by how quickly they could become exits. Daniel was not fighting treatment. He was mapping threats. A young resident approached from the left carrying gauze. Daniel's entire body tightened. Not that side, Evelyn said. Too late. The resident reached toward Daniel's ribs. Daniel caught his wrist, twisted, and slammed him against the wall. Security rushed forward. Stop, Vale shouted. Daniel tore the pulse ox sensor from his finger. Blood seeped faster beneath the dressing. Evelyn saw it then. Beneath the edge of the torn shirt, just above Daniel's left ribs, an old crescent-shaped scar crossed by 3 smaller marks. Her breathing stopped for half a second. She knew that scar pattern. Not from a textbook. Not from nursing school. From somewhere she had spent 8 years trying not to remember. Everybody out, Vale ordered. Security, restrain him. Daniel's hand closed around a broken piece of plastic from the tray. Come closer, he warned. And somebody gets hurt. Security hesitated. Evelyn moved. Cross. Vale snapped. She ignored him. 1 step. Then another. Daniel raised the plastic shard. Evelyn stopped 6 feet from the bed, hands visible at her sides. His pupils were wide. Sweat ran along his temple. His breathing came in controlled bursts despite the pain. She did not call him Chief Mercer. She did not tell him he was safe. Men like Daniel did not believe words like safe. Instead, Evelyn looked directly into his eyes and said something no civilian nurse in that hospital should have known. Blue room. 7. Daniel froze. The shard slipped half an inch in his fingers. The fury disappeared from his face so suddenly that Dr. Vale stopped breathing behind her. Daniel stared at Evelyn as if the quiet nurse had just opened a grave. Where, he whispered, did you hear that? Evelyn said nothing. And for the first time since arriving, the injured SEAL looked afraid of someone other than himself. Daniel Mercer did not lower the shard, but he did not raise it either. For several seconds, the trauma bay seemed to shrink around the space between him and Evelyn Cross. Blue room. 7. He repeated, slower this time, as if testing whether the words were real. Evelyn's expression remained unreadable. Put the plastic down, Chief. Daniel ignored the command. His eyes traveled over her face with the intensity of a man searching an old photograph for someone who should not be there. Answer me. You're bleeding. Where did you hear it? Dr. Adrian Vale stepped between them. That's enough. The spell broke. Daniel's shoulders tightened immediately. Evelyn noticed it before anyone else did. Vale had made the same mistake the others kept making. He entered Daniel's space without warning. Doctor, Evelyn said quietly. Move to his right. Vale looked back at her. I beg your pardon. His right side. Nurse Cross. I have treated combat veterans for 23 years. Then you should know not to block his view of the door. The room went still. Vale's face hardened. Daniel's eyes flicked toward Evelyn again. There it was. Recognition, not of her identity, not yet, but of something he could not explain. Vale stepped aside, more from irritation than obedience. Daniel's breathing slowed. Evelyn approached one pace at a time. I need the plastic. And I need an answer. You can have one when your systolic pressure stays above 90. Something almost changed in Daniel's expression. Almost amusement. Almost memory. Then pain cut through it. His fingers loosened. Evelyn took the shard without touching his hand. Good. She placed it on the tray. Now let me see the wound. No, then keep bleeding. Daniel stared at her. You always this friendly? Only on Tuesdays. A nurse near the doorway nearly smiled. Bill did not. Evelyn carefully lifted the edge of Daniel's blood-soaked dressing. The crescent scar appeared again beneath the fresh wound. 3 pale lines crossed it diagonally. Evelyn's fingers stopped for less than a second. Daniel noticed. You've seen it before. I've seen scars. Not that one. Evelyn replaced the dressing. Pressure is still dropping. We need imaging. Vale stepped forward. We need surgery. Now. Not yet. Vale's jaw tightened. You seem to have forgotten your position. Evelyn finally looked at him. No, doctor. I know exactly where I'm standing. She turned back to Daniel. Chief, when they found you, were you conscious? Yes. Any loss of time? No. Explosion. His eyes changed. Vehicle rollover. That wasn't my question. Daniel said nothing. Evelyn watched his right thumb brush twice across his index finger. A tiny movement, meaningless to everyone else. Not to her. She had seen that habit before in men trying to control adrenaline without showing fear. You're hearing? She asked. Fine. Ringing. Silence. Chief. Left ear. Evelyn nodded. Metallic taste? Daniel looked at her sharply. Yes. Vale interrupted. What exactly are you doing? Finding the injury everyone is staring past. She reached for the portable ultrasound. Vale caught the machine. Enough. You are a night shift trauma nurse, not a battlefield surgeon. Several staff members looked away. Evelyn did not. She simply released the machine. She had been at Portsmouth for 14 months. She took the shifts nobody wanted, covered holidays without complaining, and ate alone when she remembered to eat at all. Most people knew only 3 things about Evelyn Cross. She was quiet. She was exceptionally difficult to rattle, and she never talked about where she had worked before nursing school. Nobody asked many questions. Evelyn preferred it that way. Being underestimated was peaceful. It meant no ceremonies, no photographs, no questions about deserts, helicopters, or names she still heard in dreams. Daniel suddenly inhaled sharply. His hand went toward his abdomen. Evelyn saw the color leave his face. Ultrasound. Now. Vale hesitated. Doctor, he has maybe 2 minutes before he crashes. Something in her voice changed the room. No panic. No uncertainty. Just command. The ultrasound reached her hands. Evelyn moved the probe across Daniel's abdomen with precise efficiency. Black fluid appeared on the screen. Vale leaned closer. His expression shifted. Internal bleed. Yes. Evelyn pointed. And it's tracking from higher than the rib fracture. Daniel was barely conscious now. His hand suddenly closed around Evelyn's wrist. Who taught you? His voice weakened. To read a room like that? Evelyn looked down at him. For one dangerous second, the hospital disappeared. She saw dust instead of white walls, red emergency lights instead of fluorescent ones, heard rotor blades instead of monitors. Then she pulled herself back. Someone who didn't come home. Daniel's grip tightened. His eyes opened fully. What was their name? Evelyn gently removed his hand. Save your strength. As the team rushed Daniel towards surgery, he twisted his head to keep Evelyn in sight. The elevator doors began closing between them. Then Daniel said 2 words that Evelyn had not heard spoken aloud in 8 years. Glass Harbor. The doors closed. Evelyn remained motionless in the corridor. Behind her, Vale dropped Daniel's chart. And when Evelyn turned toward him, The chief of trauma looked far more frightened than the wounded SEAL ever had. Whatever game you're playing with that patient ends now. Dr. Adrian Vale said it quietly, which somehow made the threat heavier. Evelyn Cross stood outside the surgical elevator with Daniel Mercer's blood drying across one glove. Around them, Portsmouth Naval Medical Center continued its afternoon rhythm. Phones ringing, carts rolling, nurses calling medications. But Vale seemed unaware of any of it. His attention remained fixed entirely on her. I'm not playing a game. Then explain Glass Harbor. Evelyn removed the stained glove finger by finger. Chief Mercer said it. Ask him. I'm asking you. She dropped the glove into a biohazard container. Then you're asking the wrong person. Vale's face tightened. 23 years in military medicine had given him authority, decorations, and the expectation that people answered when he spoke. Evelyn's refusal offended all three. Conference room. Now, he did not wait for agreement. Unfortunately for him, he did not need to. By the time Evelyn entered, half the trauma staff had already gathered for the emergency case review. Vale stood at the head of the table with Daniel's chart open before him. For everyone's protection, he began, Nurse Cross is being removed from Chief Mercer's care effective immediately. Heads turned. Evelyn remained standing near the door. Charge Nurse Melissa Grant frowned. Removed? She identified the internal bleed. After repeatedly exceeding her scope, Vale looked directly at Evelyn. She also used language that visibly destabilized a critically injured special warfare operator. A resident shifted uncomfortably. Actually, sir, Mercer calmed down when I wasn't asking for commentary. The room fell silent. Evelyn recognized the technique. Vale was not reviewing an incident. He was establishing a version of it. Chief Mercer is psychologically compromised, Vale continued. He requires experienced military trauma personnel, not a civilian nurse improvising battlefield psychology, because she finds the case exciting. The word civilian landed exactly where Vale intended it to. Several people looked at Evelyn. She gave him nothing. That seemed to irritate him more. Do you understand, Nurse Cross? Yes. Say it clearly. Evelyn met his eyes. You're removing me from his care. Vale leaned back slightly. Good. Perhaps humility will prevent another incident. Melissa looked down at the table. Nobody defended Evelyn this time. That was fine. She had survived rooms where silence meant something far worse. Vale closed the chart. Return to general trauma. And stay away from Mercer. Evelyn left without another word. By 7:40 that evening, Daniel was back from surgery. The bleeding had been controlled, but his condition remained unstable. Evelyn worked 3 rooms away, changing dressings on an elderly veteran while pretending not to notice the unusual number of personnel outside Daniel's room. At 8:03, a nurse entered with antibiotics. She came out 30 seconds later pale and shaking. At 8:11, another tried. Daniel ripped out his 4. At 8:17, Vale entered personally. The shouting began almost immediately. Get out. Daniel's voice carried down the corridor. Evelyn continued documenting her patient's vitals. Then came the crash. A monitor alarm. Running footsteps. He's tachycardic, someone shouted. Pressure 78 systolic. Evelyn's pen stopped. She waited. 10 seconds. 20. Hold his arm. Don't restrain him. Mercer, listen to me. Then a young nurse screamed. Evelyn placed the chart down. When she reached the doorway, Daniel was half out of bed, surgical dressing soaked red, 2 security officers trying unsuccessfully to control him. Vale stood near the monitor. Cross, leave. Evelyn looked at Daniel. His eyes were not focused on the room. He was somewhere else entirely. Chief. No response. Daniel. His head snapped toward her. Vale stepped in front of Evelyn. I gave you a direct instruction. He's tearing his sutures. Security can handle it. Security is the reason he's getting worse. Vale's voice rose. You are a nurse. Know your place. The entire corridor heard it. Evelyn's expression did not change. She stepped around him. Daniel immediately tracked her movement. Everybody stopped touching him. Nobody moved. Now, something in her tone made the security officers release their grip. Daniel sagged against the bed rail, breathing violently. Evelyn stayed several feet away. Look at me. His eyes found hers. Where are you? Daniel swallowed. Don't. Where are you, Chief? Not there. Good. What year? His breathing slowed slightly. 2026. Where are you? Portsmouth. Evelyn took one step closer. And what color is the room? Daniel stared at her. Confusion moved across his face. Then something deeper. White. Not blue. His entire body went still. No, Evelyn nodded. Then you're not back there. The monitor began slowing. 98. 92. 87. Vale stared at the numbers. So did everyone else. Daniel allowed Evelyn to approach. She reached for his damaged 4. He did not resist. How? He whispered. Evelyn secured the line. How what? Daniel studied her hands. How do you know what brings me back? Before she could answer, his gaze caught the inside of her wrist where her sleeve had pulled upward. For 1 second, a jagged old burned scar became visible. Daniel's face emptied of color. No, Evelyn pulled the sleeve down. Chief. No, his voice cracked now, not with anger, but disbelief. He stared at her as if 8 years had suddenly collapsed into 8 seconds. That scar. Vale moved closer. Daniel ignored him. His eyes never left Evelyn. I watched the woman who got that scar die. I watched the woman who got that scar die. Daniel Mercer's voice barely carried beyond the bed, but every person in the room heard it. Evelyn Cross slowly pulled her sleeve over her wrist. The movement was ordinary. Daniel's reaction was not. His heart rate climbed again. 87 became 96. Then 104. Chief Mercer, Dr. Vale said, stepping forward, you're confused. You've just come out of surgery. Daniel did not look at him. Show me your arm. Evelyn remained still. You need to rest. Show me. Daniel, show me the scar. The monitor alarmed. 2 nurses instinctively moved toward the bed. Evelyn lifted one hand. They stopped. If I show you, she said, you calm down. Daniel stared at her. If you show me, I'll know whether I'm losing my mind. Evelyn hesitated. Not because she feared the scar. She had carried it for 8 years. What she feared was what came after recognition. Questions had always been more dangerous than wounds. Slowly, she rolled her sleeve above her elbow. The scar began near the inside of her wrist, climbed diagonally across her forearm, then disappeared beneath the fabric higher up. Thick in places, pale in others. A burn wrapped around an older jagged line where torn metal had once opened her arm almost to the bone. Daniel stopped breathing. Turn it. Evelyn rotated her arm. His face changed. The anger disappeared first. Then the suspicion. What remained was something much harder to watch. Grief. No, he whispered. His fingers trembled against the blanket. That's impossible. Vale moved closer. What exactly do you recognize? Daniel's eyes stayed on the scar. October 17th. Evelyn's jaw tightened. Enough. Kinner. Chief. 0340 hours. Stop. Daniel looked up at her. Blue Room 7. The words hit differently now. Evelyn lowered her sleeve. Vale watched both of them with growing calculation. What is Blue Room 7? Neither answered. Daniel seemed to forget anyone else existed. We were trapped for 6 hours, he said. 6 men left. 2 could walk. 1 had a collapsed lung. Ruiz was bleeding through his plate carrier. Cooper had half his leg gone. Evelyn's face remained controlled, but her fingers had curled against her palm. You were medicated, she said. You remember fragments. I remember her. Daniel's voice broke. She came through the service tunnel alone. A resident near the door stopped writing. Daniel continued. Small woman. Burned sleeve. Blood all over her face. She kept telling us not to waste ammunition because extraction was coming. His eyes fixed on Evelyn. Extraction never came. Vale's expression changed for only a fraction of a second. Evelyn saw it. So did Daniel. Chief Mercer, Vale said sharply. This conversation is over. Daniel laughed once, without humor. Why? Because she knows. Vale's face hardened. Because your condition is unstable. My condition was unstable 8 years ago, too. Daniel, Evelyn warned. But memory had already opened. She dragged Cooper first. Then Ruiz. Then me. We reached Blue Room 7 when the east corridor caught fire. Daniel looked at Evelyn's covered arm. That's where she got burned. Nobody spoke. Evelyn could hear the ventilation system above them. She could hear a cart rolling somewhere beyond the door. And beneath those ordinary sounds came another one from 8 years earlier. The roar of fire inside concrete walls. What happened to her? A young nurse whispered before she could stop herself. Daniel looked toward her. She stayed behind. Evelyn closed her eyes for half a second. Chief, enough. She locked the blast door from the other side. Enough. She saved 5 of us. Daniel's voice grew quieter. Then the building came down. Vale stepped between them. Nurse Cross, leave the room. Evelyn did not move. Now, Daniel's hand suddenly caught her wrist. Not violently this time. Carefully. His thumb rested directly over the hidden scar. What was her name, he asked. Evelyn looked at him. You already know what they called her. I want to hear you say it. Silence stretched between them. Then Daniel noticed something beneath Evelyn's collar as she leaned forward. A thin black cord carrying a small metal tag. Only one corner was visible. Scratched into it were two characters. W7. Daniel's grip disappeared. His face turned white. Where did you get that? Evelyn tucked the tag beneath her scrubs. A long time ago. That belonged to her. You need rest. That belonged to Ren. Behind them, something struck the floor. Daniel's medical chart had slipped from Dr. Vale's hand. Evelyn turned. For the first time since she had known him, the chief of trauma looked genuinely frightened. Daniel saw it too. And in that instant, his suspicion shifted away from Evelyn. You know that name, he said to Vale. Vale bent to retrieve the chart. You're delirious. Daniel stared at him. No, his voice became dangerously calm. I remember you. I remember you. Daniel Mercer's words changed Dr. Adrian Vale's face for less than a second, but Evelyn Cross saw it. Men could train their voices. They could train their posture, their hands, even the rhythm of their breathing. The eyes were harder. Vale's eyes had moved toward the door. An exit check. The same instinct Evelyn had noticed in Daniel hours earlier, except Daniel had been afraid of a memory. Vale was afraid of what that memory contained. You're confused, Vale said. Postoperative delirium is common after blood loss. Daniel stared at him. Kinner. October 17th. Chief, Glass Harbor. Vale closed Daniel's chart. That operation does not appear anywhere in your medical history. Exactly. Silence settled across the room. Evelyn stepped closer to the bed. Daniel, your pressure is falling again. He was there. We can talk when you're stable. No, Daniel's breathing quickened. He was at the forward surgical station. Vale turned toward the nurses. Everyone except essential personnel out. Now, nobody moved immediately. That hesitation irritated him. That is an order. The residents began filing into the corridor. Evelyn stayed. Vale pointed toward the door. That includes you. Daniel caught the bed rail. She stays. You are in no condition to make clinical decisions. She stays. Vale's jaw flexed. Nurse Cross has been removed from your case. Daniel almost smiled. Then put her back. Chief Mercer. Or find another patient. Evelyn saw the argument building and interrupted it. Enough. Both men looked at her. Daniel, lie back. Doctor, either let me stabilize him or explain why protecting your authority matters more than his blood pressure. Vale's expression hardened, but he stepped aside. Evelyn adjusted Daniel's oxygen and checked the surgical dressing. His skin was too warm. 102.6, she said. Possible infection. Daniel's eyelids fluttered. Not infection. You don't get to diagnose yourself. Always bossy, his voice weakened. Ren. Evelyn's hand stopped. Vale heard it. So did Melissa at the doorway. What did he call you? Vale asked. Evelyn ignored him. Daniel, stay awake. But the room was already leaving him. His eyes moved past the ceiling into somewhere darker. Cooper, he shouted suddenly. His hand grabbed empty air. Move. Move. Daniel. Ruiz is hit. The monitor accelerated. Extraction point compromised. Evelyn leaned closer. You're in Portsmouth. No bird coming. His voice was breaking apart now. Coordinates wrong. Somebody changed the coordinates. Vale went completely still. Evelyn looked at him. Daniel continued fighting ghosts. Ren, leave him. Leave Cooper. Daniel, listen to me. Doors coming down. His hand found Evelyn's forearm and locked around it. Ren. Evelyn lowered her voice. I'm here. Daniel froze. 2 words. That was all it took. His eyes opened, but they were not seeing the hospital. You came back, he whispered. Evelyn swallowed. Stay with me. I watched you burn. Daniel, I saw the ceiling collapse. His eyes filled with something he had apparently carried for 8 years. They told us there was nothing left to recover. Evelyn's composure cracked only at the edges. You were told what you needed to be told. Why? She did not answer. Vale did. Because Ren died at Glass Harbor. Evelyn slowly turned toward him. Vale seemed to realize his mistake the instant the words left his mouth. Melissa frowned. Doctor, you just said that operation wasn't in his history. Vale's silence answered too much. Daniel heard it too. His expression sharpened despite the fever. How do you know she died? Vale stepped backward. This conversation is medically inappropriate. How do you know? Daniel demanded. Vale reached for the door. Daniel tried to rise and immediately gasped from the pain. Evelyn forced him back against the pillow. Don't. He knows. I know. No, you don't understand. Daniel looked at her with sudden desperation. Glass Harbor wasn't an ambush. Evelyn's hands became still. Vale stopped at the doorway. Daniel's voice dropped to a whisper. Our extraction coordinates were changed 17 minutes before contact. Somebody sent us into that building. Evelyn stared at him. For 8 years, she had believed the mission had failed because intelligence had failed. Daniel was telling her something else. Who changed them? She asked. Daniel looked toward Vale. I never knew. Then his gaze returned to Evelyn. But Ren did. Evelyn said nothing. Daniel searched her face, and understanding arrived slowly. You remember. Vale's voice cut across the room. Security. Evelyn did not turn. Daniel tightened his grip on her hand. They told me Ren died saving us. His voice trembled now. They were wrong. Evelyn looked directly into his eyes. 8 years of silence stood between them. Then she finally gave him the truth he had been chasing since the moment he saw her scar. No, Chief. Her voice was almost a whisper. She didn't. She didn't. The words had barely left Evelyn's mouth when Daniel Mercer's heart monitor changed. Not faster. Slower. 92. 81. 68. Evelyn's eyes snapped toward the screen. Daniel. His hand went slack around hers. The color drained from his face with terrifying speed. Pressures crashing. Melissa shouted. 64/38. Dr. Vale moved instantly. Whatever fear had occupied his face disappeared beneath clinical authority. Get Cross away from him. Start fluids. Page surgery. Evelyn ignored him and pressed 2 fingers against Daniel's neck. Weak pulse. Too weak. His abdomen was rigid, but something else was wrong. His breathing had changed. Shallow. Uneven. Then Daniel's right shoulder pulled inward. Evelyn froze. She had seen that pattern before. Not in Portsmouth. Not in any civilian trauma center. 8 years earlier, inside a concrete room filled with smoke, Daniel Mercer had done exactly the same thing before his body nearly shut down. He's not bleeding out, Evelyn said. Vale turned. His post-operative site says otherwise. The bleed isn't causing this. Move. Evelyn placed a hand against Daniel's upper abdomen. His diaphragm is locking. Vale stared at her. That makes no anatomical sense. Not unless there's old fragmentation near the phrenic pathway. Daniel's oxygen saturation dropped to 79. Melissa looked between them. CT showed old metal near the ribs. Shrapnel, Evelyn said. From Glass Harbor. Vale's face tightened. You cannot possibly know that. Evelyn looked at him. I watched it go in. Silence lasted less than a second. Then Daniel stopped breathing. Bag him, Vale ordered. A resident reached for ventilation. Evelyn caught his wrist. Wait. Cross. Positive pressure could shift the fragment. Vale stepped toward her. You are done here. Evelyn was already moving. She lowered Daniel's bed, exposed the left side of his chest, and palpated beneath the scar. Her fingers found the tiny depression she remembered. Needle. Nobody moved. Evelyn, Melissa whispered, what are you doing? Keeping him alive. Vale blocked the supply cart. You will not perform an unauthorized procedure based on an 8-year-old memory. Evelyn's eyes lifted to his. Something in them had changed. The quiet night nurse was gone. Then get out of my way. Vale actually stepped back. Melissa handed her the needle. Evelyn measured once with her fingers, adjusted the angle away from the surgical field, and inserted it with controlled precision. Nothing happened. 1 second. 2. 3. Vale exhaled sharply. Remove it. Evelyn advanced a fraction deeper. Daniel's body jerked. Air escaped. His chest expanded. The monitor jumped. 48. 56. 72. Daniel dragged in a violent breath. Melissa stared at the oxygen reading as it climbed through the 80s. Nobody spoke. Evelyn secured the line with tape. Now call thoracic surgery. Tell them there may be migration of retained fragmentation irritating the diaphragm and compromising ventilation. The resident ran. Vale looked at Daniel, then at Evelyn's hands. Where did you learn that technique? Evelyn began cleaning the blood from Daniel's skin. Not here. That procedure isn't standard nursing protocol. Neither was the place I learned it. Vale's voice sharpened. You just performed an invasive battlefield intervention without authorization. Evelyn finally faced him. And he's breathing. I can have your license suspended. Then do it after he survives. The words landed across the room like a door slamming. Daniel coughed. His eyes opened slowly. He looked confused for several seconds. Then he saw Evelyn. Ren. This time he did not whisper it. Melissa stopped beside the medication cart. Two residents at the doorway stared at Evelyn. Vale's face hardened. Chief Mercer, Nurse Cross's actions have. Daniel lifted one trembling hand. Vale stopped. Daniel looked at the needle placement, then at Evelyn. Memory moved behind his eyes. You did it again. Did what? Same angle. Evelyn said nothing. Blue room 7. His voice grew stronger. Cooper couldn't breathe. Everyone thought his lung was gone. Daniel's eyes filled with recognition. You used a decompression needle through burned tissue because the standard landmark was destroyed. Melissa looked at Evelyn. You were there? Vale stepped forward. Enough. Daniel ignored him. You kept 5 men alive for 6 hours with one medical bag. Evelyn's jaw tightened. Daniel, you carried Cooper when his leg was gone. You dragged Ruiz through fire. Stop. And when the blast door jammed, you stayed behind. Evelyn's voice cracked for the first time. I said stop. Daniel fell silent. The room did too. Evelyn looked down at her hands. 8 years ago, they had been covered in ash and blood. Tonight, they were clean except for Daniel's. Different room. Same man. Same fight. Daniel studied her with something no one in that hospital had ever given the quiet night nurse before. Not curiosity. Not suspicion. Respect. They told us you were dead, he said. Evelyn swallowed. That was the idea. Vale's head snapped toward her. Daniel noticed. Why would anyone need the medic who saved us to be dead? Evelyn looked at Vale. This time, he could not hide the fear in his eyes. Before she could answer, heavy footsteps sounded in the corridor. 4 uniformed naval officers appeared outside Daniel's room. Behind them stood a gray-haired man wearing 2 stars on each shoulder. The entire hallway straightened. Rear Admiral Thomas Keene looked through the glass, saw Evelyn cross, and stopped walking. My God, he whispered. Ren is alive. Ren is alive. Rear Admiral Thomas Keene did not seem aware that he had spoken aloud. The 4 officers behind him stopped in the corridor, but Keene remained motionless, staring through the glass at Evelyn Cross as though 8 years had just disappeared. Evelyn's face changed almost imperceptibly. Admiral. Dr. Vale recovered first. Chief Mercer is medically unstable. Whatever this is, it needs to wait. Keene finally looked at him. Whatever this is. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. That woman was declared killed during Operation Glass Harbor. Melissa's hand tightened around the medication tray. Daniel watched Evelyn. Declared killed, he repeated. Not confirmed. Keene entered the room. No body was recovered. Because there wasn't one, Daniel said. Evelyn lowered her eyes. Keene stopped several feet from her. Chief Cross. The name struck the room harder than Ren had. Melissa stared at Evelyn's badge. Nurse Evelyn Cross. Nothing on it said Chief. Nothing suggested military service at all. That rank was a long time ago, Evelyn said. Not to the men who came home because of you. Vale stepped forward. Admiral, this discussion involves classified operational material. Keene's gaze shifted toward him. I'm aware. Then you understand why it cannot continue here. Interesting. Keene studied Vale. You were attached to the medical review team after Glass Harbor, weren't you? Vale said nothing. Daniel answered for him. He signed the report. Evelyn turned toward Daniel. What report? Daniel pushed himself higher despite the pain. The official reconstruction. It said enemy surveillance compromised our extraction route. That's what I was told. It was a lie. The words landed quietly. Daniel looked at Keene. I kept something. Keene's expression sharpened. What? My mission recorder. Vale's had moved almost too quickly. Daniel saw it. Our comms were damaged during contact, but the recorder survived. I copied the final navigation packet before they took my gear. Where is it? Evelyn asked. Daniel looked at her. Somewhere nobody in the Navy could erase it. Vale laughed once. You expect us to believe you concealed classified material for 8 years? I expected someone to come looking for it. Nobody did. Exactly. Daniel's eyes hardened. Until tonight. Evelyn felt the old memory rearranging itself. Glass Harbor had always existed in fragments. Wrong corridor, delayed extraction, radio silence, fire. She had spent years believing chaos explained the rest. Now one detail returned with brutal clarity. 17 minutes, she whispered. Daniel looked at her. You remember. Evelyn nodded slowly. The extraction point changed 17 minutes before contact. I challenged it. Keen stepped closer. To whom? Evelyn's eyes moved toward Vale. Medical Command received the casualty contingency update before we moved. Vale's face hardened. Be very careful. Evelyn almost smiled. I was careful for 8 years. Daniel stared between them. You knew? I suspected. Why didn't you tell anyone? For the first time, pain appeared in Evelyn's expression that had nothing to do with an old scar. Because 3 days after I woke up, a man entered my recovery room with documents already prepared. Glass Harbor had never happened. Wren had died there. Evelyn Cross had survived an unrelated transport accident. Melissa whispered, they erased you. They gave me a choice. Evelyn looked toward Keen. Disappear quietly or force an investigation that would expose every surviving operator attached to the mission. Daniel's face went still. You protected us. I thought I was. Vale moved toward the door. One of Keen's officers stepped into his path. Doctor, remain in the room. You have no authority to detain me. Keen's voice was calm. Not yet. Daniel reached toward the bedside cabinet. His fingers shook as he removed a thin chain from beneath his personal effects. A tiny metal key hung from it. Norfolk Federal Storage. Box 417. Vale stared at the key. That was enough. Evelyn saw the truth before anyone spoke. Fear had finally stripped the arrogance from his face. Daniel held the key toward Keen. The original coordinates are there. The revised coordinates, too. And the authorization signature. Keen took it carefully. Whose signature? Daniel looked directly at Vale. That's the part one never understood. Vale's breathing changed. Daniel continued. Because the man who approved the revised casualty route wasn't Operations Command. Evelyn felt cold move through her body. Who was it? Daniel's answer came slowly. Lieutenant Commander Adrian Vale. Nobody moved. Vale's face went white. Then Evelyn understood the final piece. He had not merely written the report after Glass Harbor. He had been inside the chain before it happened. Lieutenant Commander Adrian Vale. Daniel Mercer said the name without raising his voice. He did not need to. Every person in the room was already looking at the Chief of Trauma. For years, Adrian Vale had moved through Portsmouth Naval Medical Center like a man whose reputation entered rooms before he did. Decorated physician. Former military surgeon. Department chief. The man younger doctors stopped talking around and nurses learned not to challenge. Now he stood beside Daniel's bed, unable to hide the tremor in his right hand. A wounded man's memory is not evidence, Vale said. Rear Admiral Thomas Keen studied him. No, but the contents of box 417 may be. If that box even exists. Daniel smiled faintly. You look worried for something that doesn't exist. Vale turned toward Evelyn. And you? His voice sharpened, reaching for the authority that had always worked before. You violated direct medical orders tonight. You performed an unauthorized invasive procedure. Whatever fantasy these men have constructed around your past does not change what you are in this hospital. Evelyn stood beside Daniel's bed. Quiet. Still. Vale pointed toward her badge. You are a nurse under my department. Keen's expression changed. Doctor. Vale ignored him. And until somebody proves otherwise, she answers to me. The hallway outside had filled without anyone noticing. 2 naval investigators had arrived. Then 3 more uniformed officers. Behind them stood 4 men in civilian clothes who did not look like hospital administrators. Daniel saw the first one and stopped breathing for an entirely different reason. Cooper. The largest man stepped into the room with a carbon fiber prosthetic below his right knee. His hair had gone gray at the temples, but the scar across his jaw remained exactly where Daniel remembered it. Took you long enough to recognize me. Daniel laughed once, then winced. Another man entered behind Cooper. Then another. Ruiz came last. Evelyn stared at them. 8 years vanished from her face. Cooper looked at her and simply stopped. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. Ruiz whispered first. Doc. Evelyn lowered her eyes. Cooper took 1 step forward. We buried an empty coffin. I know. Keen told us there was a possibility. His voice broke. I didn't believe him. Evelyn could not answer. Cooper looked down at his prosthetic, then back at her. You carried me almost 400 yards with this leg hanging by tissue. Vale stepped forward. This is becoming completely inappropriate. Cooper turned toward him. Whatever emotion had been on his face disappeared. Your veil. Silence. Ruiz's jaw tightened. The surgeon who signed Ren's death certification. Keen looked toward one of the investigators. The man checked his phone. Admiral. Everyone turned. Norfolk secured box 417. Contents match Chief Mercer's description. Mission recorder, original navigation packet, revised coordinates, and an authorization document. Vale's face emptied. Signature. Keen asked. The investigator looked directly at him. Adrian Michael Vale. Nobody moved. Vale swallowed. You don't understand the operational context. Then you can explain it to investigators, Keen said. I was following orders. Daniel's eyes hardened. Whose? Vale said nothing. Two investigators moved toward him. For the first time that night, Adrian Vale stepped backward. This is absurd. You cannot destroy 23 years of service over one decision made in combat conditions. Evelyn finally spoke. One decision? Vale looked at her. 5 men almost died. She stepped closer. 2 others did. You have no idea what was at stake. Something changed in Evelyn's expression. I was inside the building you sent them into. Vale had no answer. The investigators escorted him toward the door. Staff moved aside without being asked. The same nurses and residents who had watched Vale publicly tell Evelyn to know her place now watched him leave without his authority. But Keen was not watching Vale. He was watching Evelyn. When the doorway cleared, the Admiral stepped into the center of the room. Chief Evelyn Cross. Evelyn's shoulders stiffened. Sir, that rank was never revoked. Keen's voice carried into the corridor. Your service record was sealed. Your decorations were classified. Your death was administrative fiction. Evelyn looked uncomfortable now in a way gunfire probably could not have accomplished. Admiral, this isn't necessary. Yes, Daniel said from the bed. It is. Keen faced her fully. Chief Cross, stand up. Evelyn hesitated. Then slowly, almost reluctantly, she straightened. Keen came to attention. Cooper did the same. Ruiz followed. Then Daniel, unable to stand, raised his right hand from the hospital bed. One by one, every former operator in the room saluted the quiet nurse in navy blue scrubs. The corridor went completely silent. Melissa covered her mouth. The residents stared. Keen held the salute and spoke the words Evelyn had spent 8 years making sure she would never hear again. Welcome home, Ren. Evelyn's eyes finally filled. She did not cry. She simply raised her hand and returned the salute. And for the first time in 8 years, she stopped pretending Evelyn Cross and Ren were 2 different women. Welcome home, Ren. For 8 years, Evelyn Cross had imagined those words would hurt. She had been wrong. They did not hurt. They simply opened something she had spent 8 years keeping closed. Her hand remained at her brow as Rear Admiral Thomas Keen held his salute. Cooper stood beside him. Ruiz stood behind Cooper. Daniel Mercer lay pale and exhausted in the hospital bed, one hand raised despite the 4 running into his arm. Nobody in the corridor moved. Nurses who had known Evelyn for more than a year stared at her as though seeing a stranger. Melissa remembered every night Evelyn had quietly taken the worst assignment without complaint. Every impossible 4. Every trauma patient she somehow understood before the monitors did. Every time someone asked where she learned to stay so calm, and Evelyn answered, experience. Now Melissa understood how expensive that experience had been. Evelyn finally lowered her hand. Keen followed. Sir, she said quietly, I don't deserve a ceremony. Cooper gave a broken laugh. Still doing that? Evelyn looked at him. Doing what? He tapped his prosthetic leg. Pretending you were just carrying the bag. Daniel smiled from the bed. She used to say that too. Evelyn looked away. Keen reached inside his jacket and removed a small black case. This was recovered from sealed naval archives 3 hours ago. He opened it. Inside rested a faded insignia and 2 medals that had never been publicly presented. Evelyn's face went still. No Silver Star, Keen said. Purple Heart. Both awarded after Glass Harbor. Neither delivered because officially, Chief Evelyn Cross no longer existed. The hallway remained silent. Admiral, the citation says you crossed an exposed corridor 4 times under hostile fire. Evelyn shook her head. There were wounded men on the other side. It says you refused evacuation after sustaining burns and fragmentation injuries. Cooper couldn't walk. Cooper's eyes dropped. It says you remained behind to secure the blast door so 5 operators could reach extraction. Evelyn's voice became almost inaudible. Someone had to close it. Daniel stared at her. That's what you never understood, Ren. She looked at him. Any medic would have done it. No, Daniel's voice was weak but absolute. You did it. That silence carried more weight than applause could have. Keen closed the case. The Navy has opened a formal investigation into Glass Harbor. Vale has been suspended from all clinical and administrative duties pending review. The evidence from Box 417 confirms the mission coordinates were deliberately altered, and the subsequent report concealed that change. Evelyn absorbed the words without satisfaction. And the men who died. Keen understood the question beneath the question. Their families will receive the truth. That was the moment Evelyn's composure finally broke. Not when the SEALs saluted her,